Are the Democrats committing electoral suicide? That's a question I asked myself in a column for PJ Media earlier this week after watching their last debate last week, which was just an absolute train wreck. It was supposed to be the sane debate after they'd winnowed the field down to 10 candidates and held it on just one night. But no, it wasn't to work out that way. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, I think this idea that the Democrats are committing electoral suicide really came to me during, I think it was the first debate about 3 months ago now, when Chuck Todd, and as a Democratic operative, Chuck Todd should know, well, virtual Democratic operative, Chuck Todd should have known better than to do this, but he asked the candidates to raise their hands like a bunch of school kids if they supported health benefits for illegal aliens, and every single Democrat on the stage that night dutifully raised their hand like a third grader asking to go to the bathroom. And the New York Post the next day ran the front page story, "Who wants to lose the election?" And since then, it's really gotten even worse with Beto's promise to hell yes, I'm going to take your AR-15s. Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders have come out against fracking completely. They're just going to ban it and eliminate all those jobs and send energy prices skyrocketing again. Scott, out of the three of us, you're probably most likely to see Trump as vulnerable next year. And I see some vulnerability there, too, especially with suburban female voters who can really sway elections. But if the Democrats keep on like this, are they going to hand Trump a landslide?
Well, I don't know if I see Trump as vulnerable. Certainly not from within his party, and
no.
From outside of the party. You're right. It just seems like if somebody on the Republican side had written a playbook and said, if only we can get the Democrat candidates to do the following things, then we are virtually assured of the president's reelection. And the Democrats are dutifully following the playbook. It's really shocking. And you didn't even mention the fact, and this is no fault of your own. After all, the show is a relatively brief duration. But you didn't mention the fact that all of the candidates on stage also backed spending trillions of dollars to fight so-called global climate change, including Bernie Sanders, who topped out the list at $16 trillion. Yeah, that's all going to come from the 1%. Right.
So, Bill Gates going to write us a check.
It's actually, it's a great blessing. And I've got to say, for my homeboy, as a Texan here, or someone who wishes he were a Texan but lives in Texas, I am so glad to hear Beto O'Rourke say, hell yes, we're going to take away your AR-15 and your AK-47, because it's in fact what the agenda of his party has been for years, and they have been denying it for years. The AR-15, last I saw, was the single most popular rifle in the country. And so, certainly under the Supreme Court's Heller decision, it would fall under that category of widely used weapons. It's not some fringe element that crazed, white nationalist militias use or something. It's used by a lot of folks. The other thing is, and this is something that Beto doesn't like to mention, the percentage of people who die because or who are murdered by rifles, it falls under that of people who are murdered by human hands in the United States. So rifles just are not really that. I think there was something like 364 people in the most recent year for which they have records that were killed by rifles. But it was more than that for a whole bunch of other kinds of murder that most people are, and certainly the Democrats are not upset about, because they wouldn't want to see their favorite cooking shows canceled because of the failure to be able to use a knife on TV. I buy your premise here, Steve. I think the Democrats are doing everything they can to lose what you would think, from their telling of it, based on their assessment of the incumbent president, would be the most winnable possible election in American history.
Indeed. In fact, one of their candidates, Marianne Williamson, who's just delightfully loopy. I really enjoy watching her at these debates. She was closed out of the last debate because she didn't meet the DNC's entry requirements as they try to winnow this field down to something, to a sane number. They can't winnow it down to same candidates. They don't have that many. Marianne Williamson said on MSNBC after watching the debate, let me make sure I've got this here. She said, "We might be in trouble here. This president is not just a politician. He is a phenomenon. The Democrats are sharpening their knives, and he meaning Trump, will be bringing a gun to this battle. But Bill, when I hear the Democrats making all these loopy promises and even loopier threats, I don't see them bringing a knife to a gunfight. It's more like they're bringing kazoos to the orchestra, isn't it?
Yeah, or bringing a knife to a guy who's holding a 150 megaton thermonuclear warhead. Of course, deploying that weapon is a bit of a problem occasionally if you're in close range.
Yeah.
You said that Trump has some weakness among like suburban women and so on. And needless to say, things can change. But right now, I think that the only way Donald Trump could lose the election would be if he ran unopposed. I think that would be the only way. He does get in his own way quite a lot.
Yeah.
But every single day that comes by, the people that voted for him are once again reminded what the alternative is. I think if it turns out he is reelected, and I suspect he will be, unless something really dramatic happens, and by a large margin, I think that you could say that the day that Donald Trump got elected would be the day that they swore Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez into office in 2018, that sealed the deal for 2020. Because as you mentioned earlier with Beto, Scott mentioned about Beto, and that's going to be my topic for Right Angles this week. The problem with AOC and Beto and a couple of the other members of the squad is that they're too stupid to realize, and they haven't been around long enough to be told, that you can't tell the American people what you believe if you're running as a Democrat. It's suicide. Yeah. You have to do all of these things. Remember when Barack Obama had to explain why he spent 1,000 Sundays in Reverend Wright's church without ever hearing a single anti-white message? He spent 1,000 Sundays there. He gave that speech at an American flag factory, if I remember correctly. It was just nothing but red, white, and blue behind him, So if these are people who hate America, hate the American flag, but if they want to get elected, they know they have to stand in front of the American flag and they have to do all these things. But this crop is different. They actually genuinely believe that the American people want this stuff. So yeah, I say not only keep digging, I know they're going to keep digging. They have to. In order for whoever's going to be the Democratic nominee to break out of the pack, that person is going to have to generate enough electricity among primary voters. And the way they're going to do that is by going so far out into left field that they're not even in the stadium anymore. And this is just great. Donald Trump can basically say, you put when it comes time to the actual general election, you raised your hand when you said you want American citizens to pay for free health care for illegal aliens. Here's a picture of you doing it. You want to explain that to the American people? The left is doing what your friend Sarah Hoyt coined as what used to be individual cases like magazines and TV shows and websites and so on is now happening to the entire party. It's roll left and die. Yeah. Get woke, go broke. And I don't see any way for them to recover it. Donald Trump won the key states of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio by a very thin margin, by people who were lifelong Democrats who decided to take a chance on this guy. And those people have seen their paychecks enlarged. They've seen jobs that they were told were never come back. They've seen a solid economic growth. They've seen a stronger military. They've seen a lot of things that they like. And although anecdotal evidence is always suspect, as the Pauline Kyle, how could Nixon have been elected? I don't know anybody who voted for him. Yeah. With that said, being in the business of looking at this stuff, I have not ever seen a person, I have not heard of or seen one, either a pundit or a regular citizen, who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and will not vote for him in 2020. But I have seen tons and tons and tons of people who either didn't vote for him in 2016 or did so holding their nose, who are now enthusiastically on board. And with the Democrats not having the candidate of destiny, I really don't see how they're going to keep the social justice warriors and what's left of the sane working class people in the Democratic Party together. I don't see any way that it can be done. So I'm feeling pretty good right now.
By the way, Steve, the best sign I have that President Trump will be reelected General Motors union workers just went out on strike.
Yes.
You don't go on strike in an economy that's tanking. You do it when you think that the company has the money to pay it, and
you strike when the iron is hot, not when it's cold. Exactly. That's an excellent point, Scott, and I wish I'd thought of that one myself. Listen, let me tell you what I think's going on with the Democrats. They watched Donald Trump essentially tweet his way to the Republican nomination and then tweet his way into the White House in 2016, and they're trying to duplicate this. In fact, Jonathan Chait, who is a reliable left-leaning writer, and I think he'd be proud to be called a left-leaning writer, worried about this very thing in an article I found over the weekend for New York Magazine, in which he said the Democrats are playing to their Twitter base, their most vocal, left-wing, socialist-loving base, as though this is actually the broad part of the Democratic electorate or even the American electorate, and it just isn't so. So it's one thing for Donald Trump to blast through the veil of political correctness that shrouds everything that the mainstream media puts up on every single network, every single night, and in every single newspaper, every single morning. It's quite another for Democrats to go on Twitter and sort of embrace and extend, if I can borrow Microsoft's old phrase for taking stuff over, embrace and extend on this political correctness that the rest of the country, the 90% that doesn't use Twitter regularly, that we've grown sick of. This political correctness that Trump was able to blast through to victory, that they instead are just swimming in. I think it's going to kill him, and you know what? It couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of lunatics.
You got that right.
Yeah, and that's your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Content like this needs sponsors like you, so if you like what you see, please click over to BillWhittle.com, become one of our members. We would love to have you on board. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.